Spoiler talk. Okay, so let's get to it. Let's talk about Gotham. One of the issues that I've always had with the older Batman films is that I never felt like Gotham was being portrayed right. So, the Nolan films. When you look at the Nolan films, Gotham feels like New York City. Here's the problem. In my mind, I always felt like Metropolis was New York City, where it's just this hub of transportation and people and cultures and this bright, shining city that the world knows about that everyone wants to go to. Gotham was never that city. Gotham was always seedy and raining with fog and with crime and other types of bullshit. Matt Reeves, the Batman, completely captures Gotham. The first 5-10 minutes, you see 5 different crimes happening all across the city. There's a mugging, there's anarchists trying to burn down a bank, there's a group of thugs trying to attack someone on a subway, there's a guy robbing a convenience store, there's a drug deal. These are all things happening in Gotham at the exact same time. Then the bat signal goes up into the sky. And the second the bat signal goes up into the sky, all those guys look up and they're absolutely fucking terrified. Here's the thing. It would have been 100% fine if they had taken the Nolan approach, which is the bat signal goes up into the sky and the criminal's like, not tonight, and he keeps it moving. No, they all look into the shadows because they know that that's the most likely place where Batman is going to come from to run their shit. And I absolutely love it. Segueing into that, the very first appearance of Batman. I don't know if anybody's ever watched Inglourious Bastards, the baseball scene where he's in the long tunnel and there's the Russian. Is he Russian? He's a German. He's a German general. The German general is sitting on the floor, and then all you hear is the character walking up the tunnel, and as he's getting closer and closer, the smacks of the bat on the wall are getting faster and faster, and then the tempo is slowly increasing until he comes out of the shadow and he walks out and it's this big fucking dude. That is Batman. It's psychological warfare, because for these thugs beating up this guy, all they hear is Batman walking. You hear the boots. Boom, 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 boom. And they all turn around to essentially look into the shadow, and then out walks Batman. And half of the group realizes who the fuck he is. And they're the half of the group that doesn't attack him. The other half of the group that doesn't attack him, he gets absolutely two-pieced, and then everyone runs away. But that theme continues to play itself at multiple parts in the movie, where a thug will be doing something, and then the psychological tension is basically hearing Batman. Like, for instance, there's the warehouse scene where they're in the warehouse and they start hearing the footsteps of the boots on the roof, and they're like, oh, who the hell is that up there? And they start freaking out because Batman uses psychological tactics to instill fear in the criminals of Gotham. The fear that you step outside of your house and the idea that Batman may just swoop down and run your shit if you're breaking the law prevents a lot of criminals from stepping outside of the house and going forward with breaking those said laws. Robert Pattinson does a fantastic job as both Batman and, in my opinion, Bruce Wayne. I know that a lot of people have essentially complained about his version of Bruce Wayne, but you have to understand that this movie is a journey for his Bruce. Essentially, you're in the rageful phase of Batman, where he's just running from rooftop to rooftop, situation to situation, beating the shit out of criminals on a consistent nightly and essentially daily basis. The journey that he goes on in this movie turns him from the vengeance, as everyone keeps messing with him, it turns him from vengeance to realizing that there are two sides to the coin. You can be the dark, vengeful spirit that goes after criminals, And you can also be the individual that inspires hope, that reaches down to pull up the citizens of Gotham into a better world. And I love that journey. I love the fact that the beginning of the movie, the type of Batman that you have would not work at the end of the movie. Because at the beginning of the movie, he's just beating the crap out of every single criminal he runs into. He's emotionally stunted, he's standoffish, he's kind of an asshole. But by the end of the movie, he realizes that while, yes, I have to stop criminals and punish criminals and be the fear that makes criminals decide not to go out and commit crimes, I also have to save people. I have to reach down. I have to pull them up. That's why, like, it's two really great shots. The shot of him walking out of the shadows to confront the criminals can be juxtaposed with the shot of him essentially having the flare leading the people from the flooding area up to a safer area. When he's walking on the roof with a woman in his arms and he puts her on the stretcher so that they can take her away because she's been injured. Yes, like the journey of Batman from basically being somebody who believes that only violence is the way in which he's going to change Gotham to reaching the end of essentially the movie and realizing that, oh, while violence works on criminals, I also have to save these people. It's not just about beating the shit out of criminals. It's about saving people and protecting lives. Another thing, the no guns rule. I absolutely love it. I love hearing Batman say it, which is there's a really dope scene where Gordon and him are about to go into a building and Gordon pulls out a gun and Batman's like, I don't do guns. And Gordon's like, that is your thing. That is not my thing. And yeah, because I do not remember Christian Bale's Batman ever saying that he has a no gun policy. It was just one of those things where, like, he doesn't use guns, he uses batarangs and all that type of shit. Ben Affleck's Batman didn't give a damn. Like, his freaking Batmobile had machine guns on the front, and everything that he had essentially had machine guns, and he actually fires a gun. So we already knew that Ben Affleck's Batman didn't give a damn. Now, by the time he reached Justice League and the Snyder Cut, he had more or less reverted back to the type of Batman that we were more familiar with, because he said that he was trying to do better and he didn't want to let down the memory of Superman by essentially being the brutal Batman that he used to be one movie ago. Good. Matt Reeves captures the spirit of Batman. He doesn't use guns. He doesn't terrorize normal people. He may beat the shit out of you, but he attempts to at least bring you in. I love the dynamic between both him and Gordon in this movie. A lot of the times you see Gordon as essentially Batman's lackey, where it was one of the issues that I more or less had with the Nolan films, and then also the slight cameo that we got of Gordon in Justice League, which is essentially he's a tag along for Batman. You never see Gordon essentially working a case, figuring out clues, putting two and two together, basically being every bit as good of a detective as Batman himself. You see that in this movie. They're working a scene, they're both finding clues, they're having like this really dope banter back and forth between the both of them in regards to what they're finding. Gordon may not understand something, Batman understands it, he puts it out there. Gordon puts two and two together, he discovers the next step, he plays it off of Batman. Batman figures it out, throws it back to Gordon. Like, there's a nice motion between the both of them. Like, I tossed the alley-oop to you, you alley-oop it back to me, and it's good to see Gordon essentially be a detective where he's not reliant on Batman. For instance, the prison scene in The Dark Knight, he'd have just fought his way out of there. He'd have used some type of tech, caused some type of chaos, and just escaped. In Ben Affleck's Batman, he'd have just bruised his way out of there. But in that scene, Batman was trapped, and it's Gordon who comes up with the plan to essentially get him out of the GCPD, which that leans into a super funny scene, which is the very first time he has to jump off a building and use his wingsuit, which is hilarious because when he jumps off, I was like, oh, dope, it's a wingsuit. But then like he starts like leaning, like he jumps off the building And at first he's going straight, and I'm like, oh, this is going pretty good. You know, he's just gonna like land somewhere in the street. But then like the wind starts carrying him towards the building, and it looks like he's freaking out because this is his first time jumping off the top of a building at that height. And I thought he was dead. Like, I literally said out loud when he went underneath the underpass and his head hit the beam underneath the underpass, I was like, oh, he's dead. Because his head hits the beam and he lands on top of the bus, and then he like bobbles around and lands on the floor. And I was like, oh, Batman's dead. Or at least he has a second concussion, because 5 minutes prior, the bomb had went off and knocked him out. Paul Dano's Paul Dano, am I saying that name right? Yeah, Paul Dano's Riddler. Fantastic. I put him up there with Joaquin Phoenix and Heath Ledger as great Batman villains. Absolutely fantastic. He creeps you out. He fucking terrifies you. But at the exact same time, you see just how vulnerable he is and how basically got to the situation that he's in. You understand his character arc, which is essentially he was an orphan, but he doesn't see the one-to-one parallel between him and Bruce Wayne, because he feels as though Bruce Wayne had a golden spoon in his mouth, a diamond parachute, which is the Wayne fortune, which is for him as an orphan, he had nothing. And it's like he said, when you grow up as an actual, because we always call Bruce Wayne an orphan because he lost his parents, but if you're an orphan or you're a rich orphan, you can essentially do whatever you want. But if you're a city orphan who grew up in an orphanage with hundreds of other kids who you were struggling with, and you were poor, and you had to literally claw and fight and bite and scrape in order to, in some way, shape, or form, eke out some meager existence for yourself, you will never look at Bruce Wayne and go, Bruce Wayne's an orphan just like me. He's not. He lives in a mansion. He has hundreds of millions of dollars, possibly billions of dollars. He's the head of a international conglomerate, Wayne Tech. Me and Bruce are not the same. I'm struggling. Bruce isn't. Now, while we may have some parallels in regards to pain, Bruce is dealing with the fact that he's lost his parents. I'm dealing with the fact that I'm poor, I'm hungry, I've watched other kids die, I've been let down, I've been abused, I've been thrown in the trash, I've been ignored. We're different. We're absolutely different. And I like the fact that he brings all of that energy. I like the fact that the aesthetic that they went with was essentially Riddler from the Arkham games if he just had a dash of Jigsaw thrown in. Because the contraptions he was putting people in, like the one with the rats where like it had a tube that connected to the person's mouth, and the container with the rats would heat, so the rats would only go towards essentially the one opening, which is that guy's mouth, and then they would chew through and just go through his face. Brutal. Absolutely fucking brutal. Creeped me the hell out. I loved all the Riddler scenes because of how creepy they were. The very first scene is him standing behind the mayor, and he's not breathing and he's not moving, but he's just standing there watching him move back and forth. And you're like, that is so, like, the idea of someone being in your house and being right behind you and you not realizing that they're right behind you is so fucking creepy and is so well portrayed in that scene. Or him attacking that guy in the car where he was basically waiting for him. So you see that he's watching the DA and you see Catwoman and you're like, please don't get in the fucking car with this creepy ass dude, because Riddler's in there. And she chooses not to go with the guy, and he gets in the car and he gets instantly jumped, and you're like, thank God. Because like he would have probably killed her in order to get to the DA so that he could do the whole church bomb scene thing later on. The fact that he freaks out and flies off the handle when the plan doesn't go his way, or someone doesn't respond the way in which he thinks or wants them to respond, and you see the craziness just lurking right beneath the surface of his skin. How he essentially gets his henchmen, which I think is really dope, because usually you always feel as though the bad guys just call 1-800 henchmen, and call up like the same 100 guys. I like the fact that essentially Riddler was on the web and he was talking to other people who were essentially dissidents in regards to the way in which Gotham worked and how things were in the current status quo. And he essentially created like a little cult following. And that reminded me of Batman the Animated Series, where Joker or Riddler or Two-Face would get people who had the same mental outlook of Gotham and the world as they did to essentially come over to their side and work for them, especially Joker. Joker would always get people who were criminally insane just like him, who would come over to his way of seeing things and come work for him. And I absolutely love the fact that he created like this multi-tier plan, caused chaos in Gotham, drowned the entire city, caused untold havoc and bloodshed, so that the city would finally be forced to either collapse in on itself or actually start rebuilding for a better way. Zoe Kravitz, fantastic as Catwoman. Best on-screen depiction of Catwoman we have ever received. So good. I like the fact that we got more of the Selina persona than we got the Catwoman persona. Now, we do see her doing Catwoman things, but I like the fact that they built up essentially Selina's backstory, where she's the daughter of Carmine Falcone, and she works for the Penguin, and she moonlights and steals things on the side, and she's just as agile and feisty as Batman, which I think is funny as hell, because he's stalking her and like watching her through the binoculars, and she changes into the Catwoman outfit. He's like, what the hell? And she like jumps out the window, then flips over the banister, and then snatches the thing and lands on the floor. And he's like, what the hell is going on here? It's like, I thought I was the only one who did I thought I was the only one who dressed up in leather and did this. Her relationship with Robert Pattinson's Batman, fantastic. Love it. I love the chemistry that they instantaneously have. There's another video that's going to have to be made talking about the final scene and how that last scene between both Batman and Catwoman, barely anything is said on Batman's part, perfectly captures the Batman character and the relationship that they're going to have going forward. And I can't wait to see more from both her Catwoman in future installments, since we know that she's going to Bloodhaven, which is like right up the road from Gotham, and where exactly they're going to be taking Robert Pattinson's Batman in the future. Absolutely love it. I think she did a fantastic job as Catwoman. I love the fact that her Catwoman was just as physical as Batman, which is funny because when I was looking at the catsuit, I was like, it doesn't have the claws. And then like I saw her fingernails and I was like, that's actually a really great idea, making her fingernails be like really long and almost claw-like when you see essentially Selina in her day-to-day life. And then she puts on the suit, and the suit also kind of has like these really sharp little claws as well. I was like, that's a good artistic choice. That's a really good artistic choice, and I really fucking dig it. Now, I've said this before and I'll say it again. Jeffrey Wright as Commissioner Gordon, fantastic. Absolutely fucking love them. I think he did a fantastic job as Gordon, showing that Gordon was every step as great a detective as Batman, and it's a partnership between the both of them. It's not that Gordon is a supporting character of Batman. It's that Gordon is his own entity that can hold his own, that can figure out crimes and do the detective work and the job that he has in the GCPD, and he works in tandem next to Batman. Great, because one of the things that I really do hate is the fact that we never really get to see Gordon be Gordon or show that he's just as good as Batman when it comes to detective work. Colin Farrell as the Penguin, fucking fantastic. First off, I completely forgot that it was Colin Farrell at multiple times throughout the movie, because he's so damn good as Penguin. And they set him up essentially at the end, since he's basically in control of the Iceberg Lounge, that he's gonna go off and do like his Penguin level shit. And I can't wait to see him basically become the Penguin from the comic books, because he's essentially set up at the end of the movie to turn into that version of the Penguin. Leaning on the Penguin, dope ass car chase. Probably my favorite car chase or driving scene in a comic book movie. Absolutely fucking fantastic. When he goes and gets his car and that engine cuts on for the very first time, I was watching that shit in IMAX and like I shrunk into my seat because the sound was coming off the walls of the engine just thrusting, and it was just hitting you in the chest, and you're like, yo, what is this? Am I in the car? Holy shit. I can only imagine what it was like for people who saw this in 4D, because I did not see it in 4D. I saw it in IMAX 2D, and whoo, those sound waves, man, those sound waves were just knocking my ass out. Absolutely fucking fantastic. I love how just brutal that car chase is, where they're driving on the highway and his car, like, we've had the tumbler, right? I feel as though the durability of this car is better than the durability of the tumbler, because we saw like the tumbler get hit with one rocket launcher, a little bit of debris, and it absolutely got trashed. This car, let me see, it drove through what, 5 of those giant concrete cylinder tubes, then drove through an exploding gas tanker, still landed behind the Penguin, who probably had like a 3-minute head start. Before that, got banged up by multiple cars, still caught up to him, flipped his car over, slid to the side, and was still road ready. Fantastic. Fucking love it. Yes, bring that car back. Upgrade that vehicle. Definitely my favorite Batman-esque car that they've ever put forward. Absolutely loved it in every way, shape, and form. It was dope as hell, and it was definitely one of my favorite scenes in the movie. What else is there to talk about? There's like so much dope shit, but then at the same time it's tied into a lot of the Alfred. I almost forgot about Alfred. Andy Serkis. We didn't get to see a lot of him as Alfred. I like the relationship between him and Bruce, where essentially he's someone who was pushed into the role of a father who wasn't prepared to be a father. Because it's like Alfred said, I was a soldier. My job was to protect your father. It wasn't to raise a kid. And then all of a sudden I had to raise a kid, and I had no idea what the fuck I was doing. And I feel as though I had failed you. So all I could do was basically teach you how to fight and survive. I love it. I love the fact that like he's trying to pull Bruce out of this mindset of, screw the Bruce Wayne side of me. All I want to do is go out there and beat the shit out of criminals every single night. And Alfred's the one that's like, yes, you can do that, but there's a duality to it. You can be the Batman, but at the same time, you can be someone else that helps the people of Gotham in other ways. And Bruce doesn't want to hear it. When the bomb went off, I thought Alfred was dead. And I was like, they wouldn't dare. Like, Matt Reeves, I know like you're used to doing some super wild shit, but you wouldn't dare kill off Alfred this way. Because I remember I physically said out loud when the bomb went off, I was like, ain't no way. Ain't no fucking way. And then when they showed him in the hospital, I was like, oh, thank God. because I really thought for a second that they had killed him off, and I was like, you're not going to introduce Andy Serkis as Alfred and just instantaneously gerbate us and kill this man. I love the conversation between him and Bruce in regards to Thomas Wayne, because it brings Bruce down a peg. Your father wasn't the white knight that would never break a law in any way, shape or form individual. He's not this idol that you should place on a pedestal. He compromised himself for your mother. Which, complete side note, the conversation that's had between Bruce and Alfred, super important. And it's super important because I really feel as though it's going to lead into a Thomas Wayne Jr. type situation, because of how they explain that Bruce's mother, at one point in time, she was at Arkham Asylum because she was essentially mentally ill. that's really leaning into not only Thomas Wayne Jr., but also leaning into the Elseworld story of Flashpoint, where she essentially becomes a Joker. All that shit's relevant, man. All of it's relevant. There were so many references in that one scene that I was like, this is beautiful. Does nobody else notice this? This is absolutely fucking great. If they decide to do like a Flashpoint with Robert Pattinson's Batman, you could just have Martha Wayne be the Joker. But at the exact same time, if you want to do the Court of Owls, introduce the Talons, like Robert Pattinson has said he wants to do a Court of Owls, right then and there, boom. You have an Arkham Asylum reference with Martha Wayne, and you can have one of the Court of Owl members be Lincoln March, who's basically Thomas Wayne Jr. Absolutely fantastic. I love the conversation between the both of them, with Alfred essentially trying to pull Bruce back from the edge, and Bruce who's just like, nah man, I gotta jump over the edge, I gotta see it through. I like the fact that when he found out, he went to Carmine Falcone not as Batman, because it wasn't Batman that was emotionally hurt, it was Bruce Wayne. So he doesn't show up to the club as Batman, he shows up to the club as Bruce Wayne. And I think that was a fantastic choice, because if Batman had showed up and just started beating the shit out of Carmine Falcone, you're like, well, what is this? You're not working through anything. But it wasn't. See, if Batman is the true mask, at that point in time, the Batman mask was removed, and it was the scared little boy in the alleyway, terrified to discover that his father may or may not have also been a criminal, going to Carmine Falcone to essentially get answers. And I like that choice. That choice was a really, really good one. And it really paid off for the character. And it's in his development towards the end of the movie, where he essentially becomes, or he's on the road to becoming, the version of the Batman that we essentially know and love. But yeah, ooh, this was a good movie. This was a really good movie, and I really can't wait to see more from Matt Reeves and Robert Pattinson in this universe. There's so many different directions that they can go in. I hope that they actually do end up doing a Court of Owls. I think that will be a really dope film for them to tackle. At least in this movie, they prove that they can make a Batman film where he's, for the most part, 70% of the movie, a detective, figuring out clues, running down leads, tracking down sources, and have it be compelling and interesting to the point where you don't realize that 3 hours has gone by until the credits start rolling and you look at your phone. But yeah, that's basically spoiler talk for the Batman. We're definitely not going to make it as long as the Spider-Man No Way Home one, because I kind of just went off the rails, and I really don't want to get into like all of the clues and riddles that the Riddler left around, and it's essentially a lot more difficult to do a spoiler talk for an hour in regards to the Batman than it is for No Way Home, because No Way Home was bombastic in what it was doing. The Batman is more reserved and it's more intellectual, and I don't feel like breaking all that stuff down. But yeah, thank you for coming to our spoiler talk, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.